Sponsored by Squarespace.
The Blood Elves may have binned their foul crystals and given their city a fresh lick of paint, but we all know that deep down Silvermoon is still a greasy city full of spicy, edgy boys, and the biggest of them all has got to be Astalor Bloodsworn. He's the character behind Midnight's new prey system, and he's a fairly major dude too. You may not know this, but he was the guy who discovered how to drain the Naru of their light, and he formed the Blood Knights along with the Adren, and he even supported kael'thas right up until kael'thas went completely mental. And now he is back in the scene with an all-new and brutal form of magic that is called Anguish. That's the stuff that we've been harvesting when we do our prey hunts. And on the surface, it's great stuff. It powers weapons, golems, all the things you could want. It can even be infused into people. Now, Astalor believes that just a small amount of this is enough to power the whole city. But this is Astalor Bloodsworn we're talking about. Nothing he touches is ever that simple. So, where does he find it? What's it going to cost? And just what are Blizzard planning with this guy? So many people playing WoW, it can be hard to stand out, hard to get the perfect mog. It's a bit like that online. Everyone's online, but the question is, do you look pro or do you look forgettable? And today's sponsor, Squarespace, has been shipping serious upgrades to help you in that, and they're worth paying attention to. Here is Finish Layer. It's the kind of new headline feature. It gives you professional grade animation, scroll effects, and transforms. It's the sort of polish that used to require hiring a developer, and it turns a standard site into something that is immersive, and it's all built into their editor. And of course, that's all on top of their blueprint system that walks you through building your own custom template, asking you what pages you need, suggesting fonts that work together, and a color palette that ties it all together. So you get no blank canvas paralysis, you get guided decisions that are based on their 20 years of design experience. And while you probably know about all their e-commerce stuff, you can actually sell things in person with Squarespace, be it merch, services, whatever. It all works now with Tap to Pay on iPhone, so you can just accept contactless payments with just your iPhone. No card reader, no extra hardware. And that alone makes Squarespace a hell of a lot more than just a website builder. So you can build your site for free at squarespace.com/BellularGaming. And when you're ready to set it live, use code BellularGaming and that'll get you 10% off your first purchase of a site or domain. Astalor was a Magister before the Third War, and based on this memory, he seemed like a relatively normal High Elf. But then the Scourge messed him up as much as the rest of the Blood Elves, and he came out the other side of that as grim as he is charming. Now, he was one of kael'thas's top advisors, and he was instrumental in stabilizing quel'thalas post-invasion. But as much as he was close to kael'thas, he could see the prince's madness set in, and he chose not to follow him to Outland. But as it would transpire, a little slice of Outland would come to him. That's because kael'thas sent him a gift. That gift was the Naru Muru. Now, at first, Astalor was at a bit of a loss at this, but over time he realized that if the Naru wouldn't give its energy over willingly, then he would just slurp it out of the Naru. And that is the seed for the Blood Knights, and it's basically why Liadrin claimed that she was not worthy of the light, because when she first started wielding it, it was literally forcibly extracted from a Naru. Now, along with Astalor, she abused Muru's power until it flipped into the Void God Entropius. Liadrin, of course, did get her redemption, but Astalor kept at his experiments. This even includes hijacking Mogu anima golems during Mists of Pandaria. And yes, in Midnight, we're literally seeing Blizzard bring back some really cool stuff from Mists of Pandaria. So these anima golems were powered by this red magic. It was harvested from soul essence, and officially, at least back in the Shadowlands days, it was a completely different thing, a different kind of anima, so not like anything found in the Shadowlands. Keep that in mind as we go on. Of course, now, in the game, we find Astalor playing with yet more red magic, and this time, it may finally catch up to him. So, to maybe understand what's going on here and what Blizzard may have cooking, we should probably work out what Anguish is. I mean, it does feel a little bit weird to defeat someone, loot them, and find a bunch of anguish on them. So let's make that make sense. We drop into Astalor's sanctum, and he reveals this red magic to us. He tells us it's a powerful reflection of the soul, and that it's harvested through anguish. And he means that quite literally, as in, the more it sucks for the victim, the more energy you get. He even believes that this new type of magic he's cooking up will make the Sunwell obsolete. Now, I certainly wonder what he's implying there. You do imagine, say, vast torture factories below Silvermoon pumping out energy. Quite bad. And here's the thing. We've actually literally seen this before. And to understand that, we need to talk a little bit about anima in the Warcraft universe. Anima is the essence of a mortal soul. You're born, you live a life, and all that experience charges up your anima. Then you go to the afterlife, and they throw that into their industrial recycling system. Literally just fertilizer or electricity. Shadowlands lore. The philosophy was all over the place, and honestly, the good news is you really don't need to think too hard about that stuff. Blizzard knows Shadowlands was controversial, to say the least, so they're not going to be going super hard into bringing back the worst of the Shadowlands. The point here is, there were different types of anima depending on what sort of soul you became. Now, in the zone of Revendreth, their mission was to extract as much sin and suffering from souls, and doing that produced red anima. So, red anima, red magic, harvested through suffering, and, I guess for Mr. Astalor, bottled and used to power an entire civilization. Here's the funny thing. That should sound fairly familiar. I mean, replace anguish with the word suffering, and the mechanism is identical. It really seems like it's what Astalor is doing. So, harvest it, bottle it, use it, and remember those anima golems that Astalor was playing with back during Mists of Pandaria? The ones Blizzard insisted were a totally different form of magic to anima, as we saw in the Shadowlands. Well, that was red, soul-derived, and now we see he's found yet another source of definitely not Shadowlands anima that just appears to work the exact same way. So basically, there is a pattern here. And then, there are the bottles. And I mean that literally, like the actual bottles that the Anguish is put into. Because Astalor tells us those bottles are made from a resilient form of cosmic material, one specifically built to contain something as volatile as Anguish magic. Astalor didn't make them. He did not make Anguish magic either. In fact, he has a supplier for the bottles, but he won't say who that supplier is. And if we put all of this together, I think we get a rather obvious conclusion. That conclusion is that Astalor has a contact in Revendreth. So, who in Revendreth would deal with this guy, and why? If we look at Revendreth, there are realistically only two options. You've got kael'thas or, well, Denathrius and his Dreadlords. Now, as much as Astalor supported Prince kael'thas during the post-Scourge invasion era, he wasn't exactly loyal to the crown. But he is loyal to kael'thas himself. So, when kael'thas took Muru for his assault in Sunwell Isle, Astalor called him out. He said, quote, "Quel'thalas and his foul bloods be damned. All we've worked for is gone, but they're fools to think we won't fight back." So Astalor, as much as he is edgy, probably not trustworthy, he does actually seem to be a true patriot. He just has rather brutal methods for his nation's survival. So it's not like Kael will be contacting Astalor as if he's hitting up an old friend. In fact, Silvermoon despises their former prince. They pulled down his statues and they threw them in the ocean. But remember, Prince kael'thas has changed. The Arbiter rightly sent him to Revendreth, but it didn't exactly go to plan. Sire Denathrius imprisoned him in Pride's prison, where he stuffed Kael full of guilt and suffering, all trying to make some kind of anima-infused superweapon. But after Prince Runathal's revolution, his ally, the Accuser, took personal responsibility for Kael's rehabilitation, and that is where his ultimate guilt comes out. Where, at first, he believes he's guilty for not achieving his revenge against those who destroyed Silvermoon, so Arthas. But the Accuser makes him realize that his greatest guilt was not being in Silvermoon when his people needed him most. Well, Silvermoon is once again under threat, and giving Astalor what he needs from Revendreth would actually be a way to heal that guilt. So, kael'thas can work as a theory, but the big problem I see with kael'thas being Astalor's contact is this. It opens a can of worms, a huge one. If this one soul can interfere with us mortals in Azeroth, what's stopping others? If kael'thas somehow returns because of all this stuff, it then opens up an even larger can of worms. Why don't we just go and say, ask Uther for help whenever we get a bit confused about what the light's doing? It just would not be good. Now look, if they were ever to bring a character back in an implausible way, they would do it with kael'thas. I mean, back in the day, during TBC, it was a big community meme that, like, we'd killed him in Tempest Keep, and somehow, there he is in the Isle of Quel'thalas, back. This didn't make much sense. Even though bringing him back would be a little bit of a cute nod to that past, I don't think it would be great storytelling. The most I could see is the ghost of Kael returning to Silvermoon to hand the crown over, but that's about it. Now, for some players, that's the dream. Prince kael'thas finally making things right. But there's a darker option, and honestly, one that is a bit more likely and literally throws up fewer lore problems. Denathrius. Who else in Revendreth has a proven record of messing around with us and also has the ability to leave the Shadowlands? It's obvious. It's the Dreadlords and their boss, Sire Denathrius. Now, we know this guy as the architect of the cosmic war that's still raging today, the diabolical genius smart enough to tip Sargeras over the edge into insanity, kicking off the whole Burning Crusade thing. But in the end, he was just another pawn. Prince Ranathal's revolution defeated Denathrius, right? We defeated him. He was then trapped inside his sentient blade, Remornia. But then they used a Naru to shoot pure light into that blade, making it impossible for Denathrius to escape. Sylvanas, at the time, who was on the jailer's team, asked Zovaal what the plan was, and Zovaal just replied saying that all souls live out their usefulness. So, Big Daddy D stays inside the blade. But Denathrius didn't do it all alone. He actually bred his own race of super spies, the Nathrezing. We call them Dreadlords. Now, they pulled their tricks and they freed the sword from the Naru's light. They then told us that Revendreth, Renathal, and the Shadowlands just did not matter in the face of Denathrius' plans for reality. So basically, what happened, right, is that Denathrius was so liked as a character, even though it was a very controversial time for the lore, people really enjoyed Denathrius, and Blizzard basically decided, okay, we're going to yoink Denathrius out of the Shadowlands. Maybe he can do something later. So if Sire Denathrius is still out there, trapped in a blade that was bound by the light of a Naru, then what could he be doing? Well, I think there could be a bit of a connection here. Because who is the one guy in Azeroth who cracked how to drain a Naru's energy? Astalor Bloodsworn. He's the guy who can do this. So you can imagine, the Dreadlords supply the Anguish and the bottles. Astalor gets what he wants, a way to defend Silvermoon. And when the time comes, they call in their favor, freeing their boss Denathrius from his Naru prison. Both sides get what they want, even though neither side trusts each other, and it sets up a future betrayal whenever the Dreadlords come to collect. And it also fits who Astalor is. This is the man who drained Muru without flinching. He will deal with anyone and anything if it means quel'thalas survives. He just doesn't care where the power comes from. Now, I will admit there is another potential option, and that's just this being something to do with research on the Mogu and just all downstream of that Mists of Pandaria stuff. Now, one thing that would make that a little weird is the cosmic description of what the actual Anguish bottles are made of, so that could be a little bit of a quibble, but at the very least, this is Blizzard taking the events, taking the story of Mists of Pandaria, and weaving it through to today, paying off this character really well, reintroducing him into the story in a fantastic way. Astalor is so much fun to have as a character, and they've even done it in a way that helps us get around the bad bits of the Shadowlands. And it's quite clear Blizzard are on a crusade to save the best of the Shadowlands and just move on from the worst. And this is just the latest piece of something much deeper than most people think. So deep that Sylvanas called the entire damn Shadowlands into question, because Sylvanas literally said she thinks it's too ordered. So Sylvanas has literally called BS in the Shadowlands. If you want to know what that's all about, then check out this video where we deep dive into what she discovered during her long isolation in the Maw.